Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Omni-Channel Marketer. I'm your host, Kate Stevens. Today, I'm excited to have Chris Hobson on the line today. He is the president and CEO of Rare Beauty Brands. Super excited to have you, Chris.
Hey, Kate, good to see you.
Would love to just start with your own personal background. How did you come to this, current role where you are right now?
So, just the brief version is I started my first brand out of my dorm room in college and fell in love with the world of branding and graduated with a bit of a nest egg as well as a job offer at Procter and Gamble. And so went to P&G as a brand manager and had the good fortune to work on some amazing brands like Folgers Coffee, which was a big brand at that point in the P&G portfolio. Worked on Old Spice and Secret deodorants, and actually had a hand in the early work that was done to upgrade the Old Spice brand from your grandfather's brand to something that's much more relevant today, which was a great learning experience, and learned the P&G way to build a brand and working with retailers and working with advertising, but also learned that I was much more entrepreneurial than the typical P&G lifer at that time. So left there, went off to business school, did an MBA, focused very much on entrepreneurship, did a couple of companies, very entrepreneurial companies, post business school, and sold one and did pretty well on it, and then was sort of looking for the next thing and came across this little company down in Providence, Rhode Island, and they had developed a medical device that they wanted to turn into a consumer product. And I met these guys, and they said, hey, we're looking for somebody to come in and help us make this pivot in the business. Would you join us? And so I did.
Okay, well, take us from there to, what and where Rare Beauty Brands is today.
Sounds good. Yeah. So the medical device that they were working on, it was called a transdermal patch. You're probably familiar with it. We're familiar with nicotine patches and estrogen patches. These guys had a very high-tech version of that. And the idea was that there were all these great ingredients in skincare, and could we apply that transdermal patch technology to skincare ingredients and deliver better outcomes from a anti-wrinkle or dark spots or hydration perspective. And so I thought that the kitchen logic tested pretty well with me, and I thought that was going to be a good idea. And so we took that technology and we created the Patchology brand, which we launched in 2014. And the brand has grown like crazy ever since. We've had some good things we've done along the way. We've had some challenges along the way, but we've learned a lot in the process. And the brand has been growing very, very rapidly. And then in about 2019, after 5 years of scaling the Patchology brand, I had this idea to go back and replicate something from my past, to like create a mini P&G of multiple small brands that would be leveraging the fact that we had great relationships with retailers and we had a great balance sheet and we had a great team, and could we create multiple brands on top of this. So Patchology became Rare Beauty Brands, which is essentially a holding company, and we have a couple of other startup brands that we actually haven't really acquired a whole lot of in terms of big brands. But we did acquire, we incubated one brand, and we've acquired another brand called Dr. Dana Nail Care, which is still in the sort of early stages of launching itself and getting out into the world. But Patchology is really the main focus of the business.
And why did Patchology hit the market? So why have you seen such great growth there?
Yeah, well, I mean, number one, it's great products, right? Like this transdermal patch technology that we developed, the products are highly efficacious. We use really, really high-end sensorial, materials. They're loaded, they're packed with great ingredients. So the results are amazing, right? So that's like rule number one in scaling a consumer brand. You got to have great product. So we've got great product. We also have what we think is pretty cute branding. So our North Star for the brand is skincare that inspires self-care. And so we recognize that a lot of our patches and sheet masks and things like that, foot masks, are used during that self-care moment. And that really resonates with consumers. And so as a result, rather than the branding being very, hardcore skincare-y, like derm, kind of look, we have a little bit more fun. So our brand is very fun and fresh and optimistic, and so that comes through in the packaging. And because of that, you got great product, you got really cute packaging and great branding around it. It really resonates with consumers. And then we were also the beneficiaries of a good trend, and I think that a lot of brands have to recognize that a lot of times when they scale, they're part of something bigger than themselves. So you may or may not be familiar, readers or your listeners may or may not be familiar with the K beauty trend or the Korean beauty trend that hit kind of about 6 or 7 years ago. Korean beauty does use a lot of masks and patches and things like that. And so that was it. We benefited from that. That hey, here's this K-ish beauty brand that is leveraging this American technology, this great transdermal patch technology, and great cute branding. And it's so we sort of like we had that wind at our back, if you will.
Makes complete sense. And what does the scale of patchology look like today?
Well, we're a private company, so we don't share the numbers. But I can say that the company is super profitable, has been growing 40 to 50% a year for the last 5 years, double-digit percentage EBITDA margins. So it's very profitable, growing, and at a scale now where I'm not worried about making payroll day to day. I'm more worried about like how high is up.
I guess, let's transition a little bit more to your channel strategy. How did you think about the first channel that you launched Patchology in, and,
Yep.
how has that transitioned over time?
Yeah. So for context, back in those days, so we launched Patchology in 2014, and in those days, DTC was a thing, but certainly not the thing that it became kind of 3, 4, 5 years later than that, right? So it was starting out, it was happening, but it wasn't like you couldn't just go to Shopify and for $39 a month create a website. It was much more heavy lifting at that point. Consumers were there and getting there slowly, and I was selling a slightly new product category. Sheet masks had been around for a while. Patches had been around for a while, but this was a little bit new to the consumer. And so we felt like from a channel strategy perspective, and I think every entrepreneur needs to be very thoughtful about that initial launch and where you go first to accomplish the objectives for your brand. And for us, we felt like we needed the credibility, an assisted sale. So a person in a store telling you that this is okay, this is how this works, this is what you do with it, as well as the credibility of, in our case, we launched at Bergdorf Goodman and Neiman Marcus to establish the credibility of the category, the credibility of the brand, and really start at that high end, which establishes the prestige bona fides for the brand as well. So that was why we chose Neiman's and Bergdorf, and we started out in 15 Neiman Marcus test doors, but we were selling so well within 6 months we were in all Neiman's doors, and then became all Saks and all Nordstrom, and the brand scaled in that department store channel initially.
So, high need to educate your consumer. That's like the category creation side, and then the desire to be, up market. So that makes a lot of sense why you chose those two retailers. What does your general distribution look like now? And how's that changed?
Well, I think what you realize when you're in the department store business is, unless you're a mega brand that has your own counter, et cetera, there's only 40 Neiman Marcus stores. There's only 100 or so Nordstrom stores. Like, at some point, in order to really scale the business, you need to move, either go really deep and get your own counter, et cetera, or you need to expand beyond that. And we were fortunate enough to be approached by numerous retailers in the specialty beauty space. So Ulta, Bluemercury, some of the key sort of like American specialty beauty retailers, but then Mecca in Australia, Space NK in the UK, Sephora in Europe, a good, strong specialty beauty, which really complements, and, it's still very upscale, very upmarket, but has a different scale in terms of the footprint than department store. So we made that move, and that has really helped us scale the business over time, and to the point where it's much bigger now than the department store business, is.
And then, I imagine you have a direct to consumer business. Are you guys on Amazon as well?
Yep, we do Amazon. We view the Amazon business as a place where our consumers can learn a lot about the brand. They can, you could be standing in an Ulta store and still check the Amazon ratings to see whether, it's 4 stars and above. And by the way, all of our products are 4 stars and above. And then you still buy it at Ulta. So Amazon itself is a revenue channel. It's a great place but it's also a great place for credibility and learning about the business as a consumer. Our DTC channel is almost the opposite, where it's not a huge percentage of our business, but it's really more about us learning about the consumer. So we use our DTC site in a very strategic way to engage with the consumer, to gain consumer insights, to test new products, test price points, test new bundles and ways of putting our products together. So we try to be strategic about it. It's really less of a consumer acquisition strategy for us, and really more about a consumer insight strategy.
Makes complete sense. So, D2C consumer insights, Amazon allows the consumer to educate themselves about the product, even when they're shopping in store. How do you think about, retail as, where does retail fit into kind of the purpose it serves for the brand?
We differentiate ourselves a little bit in the way we go to market with the different channels. So we have a pretty aggressive, what we call trial engine with retailers, where if you go into an Ulta, you will see us in the skincare area where you can buy our sort of higher priced products. But because of the nature of our products, they also lend themselves to the impulse category. So you'll see us in the impulse aisle or the checkout aisle at a lot of stores. And so, we do millions of new trials of product in store, where for $3, $5, $6, $8, you can buy one of our products. You can get exposed to the brand. You can see how amazing these products are. And it's easy to add to your basket. And so the retailers, they love Patchology because we don't really compete against a lot of their other brands, as well as we add to their basket in a big way. But then for us, what that becomes is a very profitable trial engine. So I hear about all these DTC brands that are like trying to be first order profitable, where we're millions of orders a year first order profitable because we're working with the retailers to trial the product. But then once she tries it, largely it's she, but sometimes he, but like when she tries it, she comes back and buys the larger size. And she can buy that larger size either at Ulta.com or on Nordstrom.com or on our Amazon.com or on our Patchology.com. So we try and be very strategic about how we have the channels work together to sort of reinforce each other.
So retail ends up being a major customer acquisition channel for you, especially with that, trialable format.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, each channel kind of serves a different purpose. How do you think about the broader Patchology brand experience and, end-to-end consumer experience across all of those channels?
Well, yeah, I think obviously we have consistency around the way we go to market with pricing and with packaging and the brand benefits. Obviously, though, those are very different channels, and I know a ton about the consumer on our DTC site, but the scale isn't there. And at Ulta, I don't know anything about the consumer because Ulta knows everything about the consumer. So all we can do is be true to who we are and what we do, and the market, we'll figure that out. But when I was at P&G, they were in the 90s. We were just starting to think about like the quote unquote customer journey or the consumer journey, and at that point we sort of drew it as like a few forks in the road. Now it's just a big plate of spaghetti, right? And the consumer wants to find you wherever you are and when she wants to find you, right? And so my philosophy in building Patchology has always been, you can't be everywhere. You can't be all things to all people. You need to be strategic about your distribution, but to just limit yourself to one channel of distribution is not only risky from a revenue concentration perspective, but it's also short-sighted from the ability to access that consumer wherever she happens to be in that very complex customer journey.
Makes complete sense. How does social media play into, acquisition or education in that journey?
I mean, it's again, when we started the brand, we didn't even think to get Patchology, at Patchology on the social media networks, because in 2014 they weren't that big. But now it has become a major place where, all of our marketing spend is on social media in some way, whether it's buying ads directly on social channels, producing content for social channels, working with influencers on social channels. I mean, it's really the entire way that a smaller brand like us goes to market. Very different from when I was at P&G, when it was all, interruption based TV and print and things like that, which now still has a role. But social media is huge for the brand. And I think in a way, brands today, just in general, you need to be a content production engine. And that's that, in a way that brands never were before. Like, you would do your one ad per year or a couple of ads per year if you were a bigger brand. And that would be your content production for the year. And you would hope that it worked because you'd spend, millions on the one TV ad. And now it's more about, spending tens and twenties and fifties on, hundreds of little ads and seeing what works. And it's just completely flipped that model. But yeah, absolutely, it's absolutely key to the way we go to market.
Makes complete sense. And, as an omni-channel brand, you obviously have access to, different levels of data across those different channels. What are some of the ways that you look to bridge the gaps, across those channels, with those customers?
Yeah, I mean, there are sort of high tech ways and low tech ways, right? Like, in terms of bridging the gaps, like, we know, when we look at our DTC data, we can get a very good sense from a persona, socio demographic, et cetera, perspective, who our core consumer is. And that can be as data-based as you want it to be, because you got access to thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of consumers that you can pull data on. But I'm a huge fan of actually getting out of my little home office here, and getting out into the stores and interacting with consumers, seeing how they're doing it. So that's more on the qualitative side. You can get very quantitative as it relates to your consumer with your DTC site, but you can get very qualitative. And often when you get out there and you have those real conversations with the consumer in the store or in the market. And by the way, we also sell into the professional channel a little bit, spas and salons, and you can get really down and dirty with the consumer there, and you get great insights that you can come back and leverage into new product development and things like that. But unfortunately, we have not bridged the gap in any quantitative way, and nor do I think we ever will, or any brand ever will, because Ulta is not going to completely just open up and I say Ulta, I mean any retailer is not going to just open up the kimono and say, hey, here's all the information about our consumers. They do share at a high level the patchology consumer at a particular retailer. This is who is buying, and in general that it's a higher level than what we get on our DTC, and in general it conforms to our DTC. So it's not, in terms of incremental learning, it's not giving us a ton of extra. And then finally, we track sell through maniacally with the retailers.
Yep.
And that is another area where there's no one. When I was at P&G, you had Nielsen or IRI, and they did all the data collection and data normalization, and you were able to just plug in and go. In the specialty beauty world, there's no such thing as Nielsen. There are a couple of things they do a little bit in that area, but bottom line, we have to do a lot of the data collection ourselves, log into portals, download stuff into spreadsheets, upload it into standardized formats, and that gives us a good sense for where things are going. And again, that is absolutely critical to the success of an omni-channel brand. You have to know where your sell-through is.
And what are some of the ways that you, as an omni-channel brand, can support sell-through?
Yeah, we invest heavily. I mean, I mentioned our trial strategy in store, so we're constantly getting new consumers into our franchise through trial. We also invest in display units so that we can tell that brand story and create a brand block, and that's been super, super successful for us in the last while. And numerous people know the Patchology brand because we got these in some stores. We got these big billboards saying, "Here, come here, get your Patchology." And as I mentioned, the Patchology branding and packaging is very cute and fresh and optimistic and vibrant, and so you're sort of pulled in by it, and you get in there. And then the final thing is, and this is less of a thing for mass market, but really more for the assisted sale area. We do a ton of education with the staff, the store staff. So we have separate social media sites or channels rather for them to follow and learn about the brands. We have dedicated people that go into stores. We don't have a huge dedicated force, globally to do this, but we've got several people that go into stores and sample product. They give free gratis to the store staff because, they are the ones there day to day in the hand-to-hand combat that is retail land, and that's
Mm-hmm.
critical that they know our stuff, love our stuff, and then can recommend it authentically.
And when you talk about your trial program, is that say a mask, for example, you could purchase one and then enter the brand and then make larger purchases. Is that kind of what that looks like?
Yeah, exactly. So, like for our OG product, our original product is the rejuvenating eye gels. So they're eye patches that you're great in the morning, caffeine and depuffing, refreshing, getting you ready to go and start your day. We have a single that sells for $3 that you can buy at Ulta as a single. You can buy it at numerous places as a single. We have a 5 pack. We have a 15 pack and we have a 30 pack. And so we have the trial engine leading to the replenishment SKUs. Obviously, there's a pricing ladder there, so the bigger pack you buy, the better value on a per unit basis you get. So we've been able to develop that and hone that strategy, and that's been really good for the business.
And so Patchology is now part of Rare Beauty Brands, which is a growing portfolio. What do you think you've learned from growing Patchology that you're looking to bring to to this broader portfolio?
Well, I think one of them is, kind of the focus of your podcast, which is like omni-channel matters, right? What we've found is that, you can take a brand concept and you can launch it on social and get some feedback on it. You can launch it on DTC and make sure the consumer really resonates with it. You can launch it on Amazon to test, can we scale this? But, everybody talks about e-commerce, e-commerce, e-commerce. In the beauty market, 70 to 75% of purchases still take place in stores. And so to really build a business, especially given how customer acquisition costs have gone up online, you do need that store presence. So certainly that's something that we have learned over the years with Patchology, and then we are applying to the new brands. The other thing is that back office matters. I see a lot of brands. We look at acquiring brands, and I see a lot of young brands that beautiful social media, beautiful websites, beautiful packaging, and then you look at their financials, and it's like terrible because unit economics really matter. Efficient, supply chain really matters. Getting accounting the book for the accounting, doing all the accounting and closing the books on time as advertised really matters. And so like we can bring that extra sort of financial discipline to smaller brands to help them scale and I've seen numerous brands that like otherwise should have succeeded, but just the back office and just knowing how to price things and how to source things and what your product margins need to be, just haven't been there.
Yep, that makes complete sense. So love to talk about something that, all of our guests are passionate about. And before the call, we were talking about how for you, that is being omni-channel. And in many ways, you were ahead of the curve there. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts on why you're so passionate about that and where that kind of understanding even came from before it frankly became the popular thing to be today.
Well, yeah, thank you for spinning it in a positive way. I actually had suffered the slings and arrows from talking to venture capitalists and private equity folks over the last, especially 4, 5, 6 years when DTC and Amazon have been all the rage. Hey Chris, why is your Patchology Amazon business not bigger? Why is your DTC business not bigger? And now we're kind of ahead of the times, as you say, but really we were pitched as being behind the times previously. But I think it started for me from my history at P&G. Right at P&G in the 90s, obviously there was no internet yet, there was no e-commerce yet, and so it was all about partnering with retailers to tell that brand story in store and get access to the consumer. And I had a really visceral example of that where I was at P&G in Canada and we were launching the Folgers coffee brand into Canada. And Folgers coffee had good brand awareness in Canada. We get a lot of TV advertising in Canada from the States and people travel south and stuff. So they were aware of the Folgers brand, but you couldn't get it anywhere in Canada. So we launched the Folgers, brand. We launched the advertising, and my job was actually to take the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup advertising that was at that time very Americana advertising and make it more Canadiana, so that it was on theme. And we did that, but at the same time we partnered with Walmart. And we went from non-existent to the number one coffee brand in Canada in 18 months. That was a major win. It got me promoted. It got other people promoted. And that was sort of my first time getting real religion on. If you get the branding right, which we felt like we did, we obviously were starting from great product and, the fundamental brand promise was there, but you get the marketing right and the advertising right, and then you get the go-to-market right with that right retail partner, and things can just absolutely scale. So that's kind of probably what started me on the journey. But then, as I said, as we got into building Patchology, we had to look very strongly at we need this assisted sale, we need this education, we have this new product category, we need the credibility of Neiman's and those other retailers.
Makes complete sense. All right, so transitioning into our lightning round, so just kind of quick answers.
Okay.
Favorite omni-channel brand?
Yeah, I was struggled with this one actually, but I would say if you know On Technology, which is the shoe brand, the running shoe brand that has really blown up recently, I think they do a really good job of, they started out, I think, mostly DTC, and they've got a very compelling, online presence, but then they've now leveraged that into really strong in-store presence that I've seen. Yep,
makes sense. What do you wish you could change about our industry?
Our industry being, I'm going to focus on the beauty industry being, that's sort of more my industry. I wish there was more truth in advertising. I wish there was more transparency around what brands claim versus what's real, consumer perception studies versus clinical studies. I wish that was better explained to people, what's real and what's not real.
And who do you think needs to do a better job? Who's the onus on of educating the consumer on the differences?
It's a major challenge, especially in the world of social media. So I'm on the board of an industry organization called the Independent Beauty Association, and we do a lot of work to educate brands on what you can and can't say. But the nature, the fundamental regulatory structure of our industry is in cosmetics and in a lot of CPG. You can pretty much put any product on the market, and you don't have to pre-register it, or historically, that's changing now, but you don't have to pre-register it, you don't have to prove it's safe. You just have to be comfortable in yourself that it is safe, and then people can sue you if it's not safe, but pretty much it's free commerce. You can put anything on the market. And so we do a lot of work educating brands that, you have to do this testing and that testing, and you need to really substantiate your claims before you go to market. But it historically has been a relatively loose regulatory environment in this country. And again, I would love to change that.
Makes complete sense. What is your favorite podcast?
I'm a big fan of The Daily Stoic. So there's this philosophy called Stoicism, and there's this guy, Ryan Holiday, that's written a bunch of books about it. And it's a great way for me every day, walking the dog, to ground myself.
Favorite newsletter?
Yeah, I don't really have a favorite. Actually, I do. I don't know if it's a newsletter or like a daily email, but there's a brand there's an entity called Beauty Matter. And Beauty Matter puts out a great daily email of what's going on in the beauty industry.
Favorite social media channel?
I have to do a Homer one on this one. So our Dr. Dana brand, Dr. Dana is this nail dermatologist, and she's got a TikTok where she puts out amazing content that educates the consumer, and it's the fastest growing nail care brand on TikTok.
Wow. Favorite book?
Yeah, so sticking with my Stoicism philosophy, there's a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, who was a great Roman emperor way back when, and he sort of pioneered, or he probably didn't pioneer it, but he was one of the first philosopher king. So the person who's out there doing things in the world and interacting with the world, but trying to be wise and philosophical with how he did it. So love that book.
And then any events that you're excited about attending this year?
Yeah, again, I'm more probably in the beauty space than many of your folks, but there's Cosmoprof is a big beauty event that's good. We just had Miami, Bologna, Italy is coming up in March, and so I'll be at that. And then they have one in Hong Kong in the fall that I'll be at as well. If you want to learn about the beauty industry, it's a great place to go.
To Hong Kong or Cosmoprof in general?
The Cosmoprof events are great to go. I mean, hey, Hong Kong's great to go to, and Bologna, Italy's great to go to, just, regardless. But you learn a ton at Cosmoprof about every layer of the industry, from retailers to brands to suppliers and service providers. It's a really good overview.
Awesome. Well, Chris, where can our listeners connect with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I think my extension on the LinkedIn URL is, I think it's Christopher Hobson. So I'm there. That's probably the best place.
Great. Chris, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And it was great to learn from you.
Thank you very much for having me, Kate. Really appreciate it.
If you liked this podcast, Follow me and the Bridge page on LinkedIn and Twitter for hot takes and tactical advice. If you really loved today's episode, we'd love a review on the podcasting platform of your choice, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thanks for listening.